I'd like you to turn to the book of Mark. We're in chapter 9. When Jesus came down from Transfiguration, amazing event, he comes down to find a big argument and a big kerfuffle there near Caesarea Philippi. As the disciples are there dealing with a man whose son is possessed by a demon or by an unclean spirit, that child is mute, can't speak, but he keeps throwing himself into the fire. And of course, the Pharisees and scribes are there busy telling them what they should do, because obviously they're educated in the Word of God, right? Their faith is in their learning and their rabbis. The disciples, on the other hand, are taking the words of Jesus and trying to do something, but they themselves don't really know what to do either, because they're nervous with guys breathing over them. Have you ever been in a situation like that where you're trying to do something and everyone's telling you what to do? Backseat driving, right? Sometimes you get so worried about what someone else is thinking or saying that you can't even act yourself. And that gets very dangerous, especially when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, so to say. Jesus comes down. What are you arguing about? This is in verse 16 of chapter 9 in Mark. Man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you, my son, who is possessed by an evil spirit, has robbed him of his speech." Verse 18, whenever it seizes him, it throws him on the ground. He foams at the mouth. He gnashes his teeth. He becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive the spirit out, but they could not. Jesus says, you unbelieving or unfaithful generation, generation without faith, how long shall I stay with you? He's looking out there, not only his disciples, but everyone, it seems. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into convulsions. He fell on the ground. He rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Verse 21, Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? He says, from childhood. He often was been thrown into the water or fire to try to kill him, but we can do anything. Take pity on us. And then Jesus says, if I can, ? Because he said, if you can, take pity on us. If I can, ? Everything is possible for one who believes. What? What does it say? Everything is possible for one who believes or has faith. Last week I talked about the spark. It was a very short message. But that spark of faith is that beginning part, that growth. And we all have faith in something. What is it that you have faith in is the question mark. What is it? What is it that you have your faith in? So, of course, he says everything's possible. Verse 24, immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me in my disbelief, or help me overcome my disbelief. Have you ever felt like that before? I believe, maybe, but help me in my disbelief. It's almost like disbelief. It's almost like you're in the plane, right? You know the pilot can fly the plane. Well, at least hopefully. Right? Right? You're in there and it starts moving up and down and back and forth. And you saw that guy, what is his name? Nigel Carruthers or whoever it is that walked past, right? He's got that plane under control, but yet the fingers, right? The fingers. Maybe you've been in a situation, when I say the fingers, it's the grabbing, you know. And those of you men, sometimes your wife will grab like that, right? Oh, whoa, wait a minute. I need to have my arm. You can grab that. There, grab that one, right? But you know how it goes. Sometimes the guy grabs, right? Sometimes we all have faith, but we need help with our disbelief. What do you have faith in is the question. I wrote out a couple things just last night. What is it we have faith in? Some of us have faith. When we were growing up, when we first were born, we had parents. We still have parents, but I mean, we were very specifically connected with our parents because we were young, right? And we had faith in our parents. We had faith that when one parent would hand to the other parent, that we wouldn't drop on the ground. We believed that. Sometimes, you know how parents will throw the kid up, and sometimes it gets, but a lot of times it's like, whoa, I love that. Woo, it's like a roller coaster, right? I have faith in mom and dad. But that starts to kind of wane when we get to that time of life that's adolescence in our lives. We start to not necessarily always believe everything mom and dad say, or mom says, or grandma or grandpa, or also we have teachers that we believe. Now, some of the teachers we may not like, so we don't believe them as much. You know the answer, because I said so. You ever like that one? Why? I remember there was what movie was it? It was, maybe it was the play Annie. I have 5 good reasons why you should do that. Why? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's, the old, the 1940s humor, right? And you got that why do I believe? Because I'm supposed to believe. Then there are the teachers you actually love, and they know they love you, and you believe them. Are they right about certain things? Probably, most of the time. Not always. We're all imperfect. We make mistakes. Maybe you believe your religion, your Pastor John. Do you believe everything that Pastor John says? And when you're younger, you're growing up, you start, you do. Maybe even as adults, we have a belief, well, wherever this pastor goes, I'm going to go. Or that pastor, that's my pastor. And that can be healthy, but it also can be sometimes our faith in a person. It's got to be. That doesn't mean, by the way, there are people that do have faith. I actually have certain spiritual leaders, but I don't follow them because of them. There's another reason. We're going to get to that. It's something deeper than the person. It has to do with something deeper, bigger, and more profound. But we all have our, as young people, as we grow and get older, we have our faith that we have. What is your faith in? Maybe your faith, maybe you're not really Christian. Maybe you might have grown up in Islam. You have a whole different mindset to certain things. Even though Islam isn't much super different, there are things that are alike, but there are things that are very different, right? Maybe you grew up a Buddhist. Maybe Buddhism, which generally tends to be more atheist. And I know that some Buddhists believe in gods. Many Buddhists don't believe in any god. In fact, Thailand they consider themselves a major Buddhist country. It's like the top country, at least for Buddhism, at least if you're in Thailand, they say that. And it's atheist, totally atheist. But yet there's different gods that are talked about, but they're like ideas. Then you go into Hinduism and you've got all these different gods. They actually exist. Each lord is in charge of a certain day even. Maybe you'll be a vegetarian on Tuesday because of what? Lord Brahma or Vishnu on another day. You know, something like that. You've got different things. But is that faith? It changes you. But what is that faith in? Because again, parents, teachers, our faith is our faith in something that was made by the hands of people or something larger. This man in the book of Mark says, I believe, but you notice, help my unbelief means he says, I need to connect with real faith. Sometimes when we grow up in a Christian country and among our own people, and I say that Seventh-day Adventist-wise, I know that's very defined, right? You have your faith that you all say, but then you start finding it's not the same as that one from this one. How do you define what real faith is? Maybe we connect, and I mentioned before, pastors are wise ones in our life. Wise people, gurus. You go online, you can go to YouTube, and you've got gurus. The very namaste, right? The guru. That guy, I like that guru. Oh, I don't like that guru. I remember the Beatles back in the 1960s. It was funny. All the Beatles got together with some guru. And man, that guru was living high off the hog with all the money. Until, I think it was Paul McCartney's girlfriend was hit on by the guru, and that was it. It was over. Done. We're done with that. We're done with the Magical Mystery Tour. We're now to the, let's do Let It Be, right? You got all these things that happen. Faith can lead to really bad stuff if it's the wrong faith. Maybe science. Oh, watch out, Pastor. Trust the science. You like those words. Isn't it interesting that during COVID, both sides said trust the science? And you know what I'm talking about when I say both sides. Science is supposed to be observation, right? Observation and cataloging of what the observations tell us and making hypotheses based on that observation. But sometimes there are those who are quite faithful in science. One of them is here, actually. The Lost Squadron. I love this creation science. I'm sorry, I'm just flat out. I'm a creationist, okay? And I say, now some that come to the museum, one person asked me this week, you're a young earther, young earth. And I said, well, yes. I just said yes just because he understands what that means. But actually, I was thinking about it's not a young earther, it's an old earther I am. Because God created the heavens and the earth, bang, at the same time. But then the fall of Lucifer happened. Then other creations were happening. Creations and then the fall of Lucifer. So there's a long time before God came to earth and specifically made earth the way it is today. So it's an old earth. In fact, all the minerals in this earth are perhaps billions of years old. But there was no life. I don't believe there was life on earth during that time until God created it. Bill Nye, the science guy. You know him, right? Okay, those of us, young people don't really know him as much. Everyone thinks it's for young people, but it's really not. It's for more middle-aged Xers and maybe some millennials. But Bill Nye was telling us the proof that there was no such thing as, young earth, like creation. That creation happened lately, not millions of years ago, right? And he said the ice shafts, these ice where you go down and you got every ring is a year, right? Kind of like a tree, right? The only problem is in 1942, there was a squadron of planes that went down in Greenland. Greenland? Maybe it's not Greenland. Greenland, yes, in the Greenland ice sheets. And this plane was discovered just about in the late 90s to early 2000s. And finally, it's now been brought back. All of them, they melted and went through, and they actually, you can see the ice rings as you go down. And according to the ice rings, with the amount of, it went down for 250 feet of ice over the top of those ships from 1942 to now. Supposed to be 100,000 years worth of ice rings. In 1942, they made the plane. So don't tell me it's 100,000 years old. Faith. Sometimes science is not science. Sometimes it's faith. Faith is that, let me go to the definition. I want you to take a look at Hebrews 11. I'm going to come back to this idea of what we have faith in. But first, let's define faith. Hebrews 11, verse 1. You may know it by heart, by the way. All right. Are you ready? Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for. That doesn't seem like very exciting, huh? I hope there's a Jesus. Being confident in what you hope for. Okay. And assurance about what we do not see. That helps a lot, doesn't it? Actually, that's kind of scary. Faith is something you can't put in a test tube. In fact, one of my favorite scenes in The Nightmare Before Christmas, I remember I got chills down my back. I don't know, films and stuff like that, I always see things in them. The Nightmare Before Christmas, I think it was 1994 or 93, 94 when it came out. And I saw it, and Jack Skellington was singing a song, and he's trying to figure out Christmas. And he takes a Christmas ball and he breaks it and he puts it in an ether and with water, and it's like boiling. And then he takes a piece of mistletoe or something like that, and he's singing. He says, "I don't understand it. What is up with this? What is with Christmas?" Because Jack is from Halloween land. It's not a place of faith, so to say. It's a place of the flesh, right? Everything there in Halloween land. It's this idea that each place has its location, right? But he's trying to understand Christmas. And then he says the words, does that mean I have to see it if I cannot believe it? And I was like, bang. It's one of those things. Christmas falls into that faith area where you believe in something that's bigger and better than anything else. Just because I cannot see it doesn't mean I can't, what? Believe it. Jesus says to this guy, do you believe? And he says, Lord, I believe. Help my disbelief. Help me to believe. And that brings me to an amazing text that is in the Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 2. An amazing thing. And before I read this text, there's another thing that this world popularizes to believe in. Yourself. Now, I have to be careful about this because you do have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your abilities. But how much of ourselves is worth believing in? Think about that. If I don't look in the mirror, I am perfect. Right? If I blame everyone else for everything I do, I make no mistakes. Right? Aren't I awesome? Don't you wish your girlfriend was just like me? Don't you think can't you just be awesome like I am? If now there's other of us that have lesser opinions of ourselves. So we always put ourselves down. Maybe we don't say that. Now, I put myself down a lot because I enjoy doing that. It actually is fun to do because, I don't know why, just fun. But other people don't like it sometimes. But honestly, we as human beings sometimes put ourselves down hoping that others will raise us up. Sometimes we push that we're so much better than everyone else because we feel insecure. So what is there to believe in ourselves? I believe that I have my genetics. I believe that I was made the way I was made. I have my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my family, my environment that molded me in so many different ways. Since when am I worth anything? In fact, in the book of Jeremiah, it says that the heart is deceitful above all things. Don't follow your heart. That's what it literally says in the book of Jeremiah. And then I hear Christians out there saying, follow your heart. That's a good one, isn't it? My friends, I can't change my skin color. I can't change my spots. I am who I am. But here Paul changes from that to something amazing. What is your faith in? I can sing as much as I want. I believe I can fly. But if I jump off the building, I'll fly a very short time. I'm not as awesome as I want to be. But I discover something from God here in the book of Ephesians. Let me read verse 1 of chapter 2 in Ephesians. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and your sins. Oh, Pastor, why are we talking about sin? I'm okay just the way I am. Remember that? That's how we always are. Sin is missing the mark that God has for us. Sin even sometimes is just plain not. You know, there's times I sin that I have no clue about. I'll say something, and maybe even in this presentation, I might have said something that offended somebody. I can't help that. I'm born in sin. But what I can do is this. So he says, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world, the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. Verse 3, all of us who have lived among them at one time, gratifying our cravings, gratifying our flesh, following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by our nature deserving of wrath, but because of his great what? Okay, here we go. Because God loved us. God so loved the world that he gave, remember that? God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes, faith in him, might have everlasting what? Life eternal, siempre viva. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in our transgressions. For it is by grace you have been saved. Grace. Grace. Getting what you don't deserve. Definition of grace. Grace. Getting what you don't deserve. Mercy. Not getting what you deserve, right? It's almost a mirror, one and then the other. By grace you have been saved. But let's continue on, because it's not to the popularized verse just yet. Verse 6. And God raised us up with Christ. He seated us with the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved. Now, grace, you've been saved. So now, grace is the straw. Okay, like you ever drink a soda or something like that, and you've got it here, the cup, and you put the straw in. Grace, put it down. Okay, grace, you have been saved through the straw of faith. Grace, faith pulls it in, right? You're pulling it in. That's the conduit. So it's by grace you have been saved through faith. And that, what's afterwards? And that, what's the that? Some people will say grace. Faith is not of yourselves. Actually, syntactically, faith is not of yourself. Remember this man. I believe, help my what? Unbelief. Grace is coming, and the faith that conduit, that straw did not come from me. It's from the one who made the drink. In other words, faith that comes from God, you cannot create. Did you hear me? You and I, because our hearts are dark, because we all have fallen, we have no faith in and of ourselves, zero faith. But each person is given a gift, measure of faith. It's from who? It is by grace you have been saved through faith, and that faith is not from you. It is a gift of God. What is your faith in? That's kind of a trick question, isn't it? Because it's not my faith. It's God's faith. How is it that you can believe in a God that is giving you everything? You can't. It's impossible. Unless you ask. And you know, before you ask, there is a kernel, a spark, a mustard seed that's been put in you to ask. Do you know that? For when God created you, into you was breathed the breath of life. Ruach, all right? The ruach, that spark, that breath. And it is that in you that calls out to the Father. Your faith cannot be built on what people tell you or pastors speak about. Your faith must be built on the words of God. As you reach out, and this is, again, one thing in our culture. We so have been told we need nothing. We are perfect just the way we are. Sounds like Laodicea, doesn't it? I am in need of nothing. But God says, we're blind, naked, sick. If only I could give you eye salve so that you might see. My friends, the only way to faith is to ask. How do you ask? Well, sorry for using the Bible like this, but it's a good one to knock, right? Knock, and the door shall be opened. Seek, and ye shall find. My friends, you are only enough. I am only enough so long as God fills us with Himself. Faith is not from you and not from me. It's from God. You and I, the reason why there's community is not because I'm cool or I'm a nerd. The reason why there's community is not because we live in an area or don't live in an area. The reason why community comes is because that faith is like Legos and we lock together in that community. And God has called you to call on Him morning, noon, and night to rejuvenate you so that you might have real faith. That is action.